Welcome to Talking Point with Stephen Taylor. It's good to have you along. And today, a guy that's always ready, Mr. Ready D. Brother, how are you, man? Good to
I'm
have
very
you.
well, man. Yeah, thanks for having me on Talking Point. Awesome to be here.
Thanks, brother. Thank you for being here. So, wow. The name Ready D, of course, everyone knows that. Tell us about how it all began for you, where you grew up, where you went to school. Tell us about your early days, because I don't think a lot of people kind of know about that, right?
I was born and bred in District 6 though, so my family were amongst those that were forcefully removed out of the area due to the previous apartheid sort of laws, the Group Areas Act.
Yes.
We were victims of that, unfortunately. From the musical side of things, I would say I've definitely been influenced by music since a very early age, because with District 6, it's a community that has always driven my music. So I grew up with the traditional Cape Malay type of music, the Cape Malay choirs, the Christmas choirs, the klopse, the achas, the whole story, the guma, all of those things. From my father's side, my dad was into jazz, he was into disco, funk, and all those types of things. So I was influenced by a whole range of musical sounds since a very, very early age. Unfortunately, my father passed away a year before we moved out of this District 6. So it was a very, very difficult period. You lose your grandparents first and foremost. So there was like a pattern taking place. It's almost like District 6, it withered, and my family withered with the area as well. So there was this kind of pattern that happened, and it was this chain of events that took place. So it was grandparents, then dad, then the area, then we found ourselves out in Mitchell's Plain. And Mitchell's Plain was still a very dusty, windy area at the time. There wasn't a lot of development.
Not the same place we know now.
No, absolutely. No, the nearest
Nothing
shop,
there.
The nearest shop was a bus on a corner somewhere in the sand dunes.
Wow.
And that was the closest shop. That's where we had to walk to, because we were amongst the first, if you want to call it, residents in the Lentegeur Beacon Valley area, in terms of, my mom still lives at the same place at the moment. And right opposite mom's house, there was a big, big black sand hill. And that was the hill where everything started for me when it comes to hip-hop and b-boying or breakdancing, in layman terms. Because we used to jump around in those hills and do all crazy things.
What, like a sand dune or what?
Sand dunes, yeah. Eventually the sand dunes made way for a primary school that came up on that plot.
And that's where you went to primary school?
No, actually my youngest son went to primary school over there, yeah.
And where did you go to school?
I attended Zonnebloem Primary School in District 6. So for the first 2 years of living in Mitchell's Plain, we had to commute and take the train through.
Was that rough? Was that tough?
It was extremely tough, because you didn't have no adults to accompany you. My mom had to wake up much earlier. She had to take a bus to work, because that time commuting from Mitchell's Plain to town was very, very difficult. The routes weren't as fluid as it is these days at the moment,
And your father just passed away or what?
Dad passed away, so the support structure, it was a very, very difficult support structure, so we all had to pull together. Thankfully, my mom, she's still awesome though. I had my sister take care of me as well, so the two of us used to jump on the train. And that was practically it for 2 years back and forth. The first school I attended in Mitchell's Plain was a primary school called Number 21, because those years the schools had numbers.
Really?
Number 21, yeah. And then I attended Lentegeur High. From Lentegeur High, I went to Oaklands High. And because of, I would say, my character and the people I surrounded myself with, and just being at that age as a young guy, you think you know everything at that age. That landed me back in Mitchell's Plain, because Oaklands didn't want me and my genote.
As we all do, right? We all were naughty when we were young,
I'm telling you. And, I would say around about then, that's when I started getting more serious with music and DJing. So as all these events are taking place, it was the state of emergencies as well, People started barricading roads, people getting shot at.
Oh, that was in the apartheid years?
In the apartheid years, yeah. So as a kid growing up, there was a lot of confusion around all these things as well. Now, because of the divide, and I still firmly believe, as young men growing up on the Cape Flats, especially so-called colored men, we were systematically brought up to self-destruct. So it was very, very difficult for you, especially if you on the Cape Flats areas, you know, your Mitchells Plains, your Bonteville's and those types of areas. And if you look at the level of divide then, it was more clear than what it is today. So it's gangs, it's drugs, that's the options. Or if you had a very strong supportive family or friends, there was still some way or some sort of, there was some means, you know, in order for you to be able to lean towards to
get out of there.
Exactly, yeah. So unfortunately, my side of things wasn't as, how would you say, as rosy as that though. Because remember, my mom had to work every day, so we were practically left on our own.
Lots of challenges.
There we go. So as a young guy, what do? You're going to hang out with your friends. Your friends are into all those things, so naturally you run.
Do that. Peer pressure, right?
There we go.
That's what happens.
Definitely. Definitely. So all of these things are taking place until I've seen my first hip-hop video. And I'll never forget this in 1981. I've seen this music video by this artist called Malcolm McLaren, and he's a British artist. He was heavy into the punk rock scene.
Really?
But at the time, because of his cutting edge nature, he went to New York to confirm the hip hop scene, because hip hop just started exploding in New York City at that time.
Yeah.
And due to Malcolm McLaren's work, that traveled across the globe, because they had a couple of commercial hits with this project. And then I've seen these guys on turntables, you know, scratching, and I could identify because I grew up with a turntable.
Yes,
You know, my dad had a hi-fi, and I grew up with mobile DJs and all these things.
All right.
So I knew exactly what that was. And when I heard this wiki, I was like, what? What's going on over here? And I've been checking out these moves these guys were doing, but I didn't know it's hip hop or whatever. And these guys were like doing things with their feet on the ground and spinning on the elbows, and they were jumping on their hands and spinning on their heads. And I was like, whoa, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I could relate to that. And everybody in the music video, they look like kids from my community, so I could immediately relate. And these guys were talking in a rhythmic form, and I'm like, but I can do that. That's how we talk. But of course, we did it in Afrikaans.
Can you beatbox?
I can beatbox.
Oh, wow.
I can't throw it on a mean beatbox, but I can beatbox. But anyway, so that was kind of like my link to hip-hop culture, because everything I've seen in that video, I could relate to all of that, because I thought these moves they were doing, that was like some fancy kung fu to this really interesting music, because we did kung fu and bola makisis as our own form of grassroots gymnastics.
Yes.
We used to do all those things, and I was like, this is cool, so we can do all this bola makisis to music. That's really, really cool. And these guys are speaking in a rhyme form, but we used to, you know, tell jokes in the rhyme form, or we used to poke fun at each other in the rhyme forms. Kyk af, just laugh, kyk hier, awe, kyk op, just a pop, my bro, just gedop, you know, that type of stuff. That's how we used to talk. And for me, just thinking about it, so we were actually into hip-hop way before we learned that this whole thing was called hip-hop. So it was just this natural sort of gravitation to